I'm Johnny, Desjardins.
Okay,
And I'm Tony Gray. I draw the Incredible Conduit and the Fair Ones and White Plastic for Legacy Comics.
And I'm Jason Fabok, and currently I'm working for Aspen Comics.
Okay. Why don't we start off just by talking about how each of you broke into the industry and started in the lecture.
Well, I got in through Dave Finch, right? Really started out as his background assistant, and then kind of spiraled through there, really.
And how did you even get to that stage? Did you send him submissions, or?
He was actually at the mall, and he was doing, I can't remember, it was for a local something, and he was there, and I knew he was going to be there. And then I went and I saw him, but I didn't bring anything with me. And then I got talking, and I said, will you be here if I go home and get my stuff and come back? And he said, most likely. So I did that. He was impressed by it. He gave me his number, and then it just kind of rolled from there.
That's great. Now, do you know, is there anyone else that had sort of tried to do the same thing with him? It was sort of like trying to sneak their submissions.
I'm sure
away?
people have always, like, you know, showed him their stuff or sent in stuff, and he used to work at the Top Cow Studios, right? So he's kind of used to the whole people coming in type of thing and training people, I guess you could say. So it wasn't anything new to him.
That's great.
What was probably new was that the material was worthwhile and good, because I've been out with him so many times where people show up, they bring material, and he's such a great guy. He's so polite, and he takes them through what they should do to improve. But realistically, there's no hope for these people whatsoever.
It's a lot of work, you know.
Yeah.
It's labor intensive. I've heard that term over and over again, right? And it truly is, because it's a lot of drawing. It's just drawing over and over again. Same things, you know, arms, faces, legs, over and over again. So, you know, you got to just keep with it, stick with it, keep doing the same stuff. Even though it does feel repetitious, or, you know, you feel like you're going nowhere kind of thing, even though you are. But it's a long process.
And if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
24.
24. Okay, so you took art in school, obviously.
No, I actually failed art in high school. And I have no college or anything like that, right? So I wanted to do it on my own, essentially, like in the beginning. And then just winding up the way that I did turned out far more better than I could ever imagine, right? Because I was a huge fan of Dave's for many years, and I was like an uber fan of his. So first off, getting to meet him was a huge deal. And then it's like, you know, you get to work with him side by side, you know. It was just like better and better.
Dream come true, eh?
Yeah.
That's great. So now, what would you say, what was maybe the biggest thing you learned from working with him?
That's a huge list, really. Because when I started with him, we went right down to figure drawing, you know, solid foundation, and built everything up. So I've learned, you know, muscles, anatomy, right, shadowing, rendering, composition, page layouts, just, you know, everything. Broad stroke of everything, you know.
Okay, and now on to Tony. What about yourself?
Well, when I was about 4 years old, I drew a Donald Duck head that looked like Donald Duck. And there was a little girl that lived next door who really liked it. And I thought, I think she gave me a nickel for it, which gave me like those little chocolate footballs, 5 of them. And I thought, girls, money, chocolate, are you kidding me? I'm all set. This is the way it's going to go for my life. And that's pretty much what it was. A few detours here and there, you know, playing in bands. But I've been drawing comics since I was 5 or 6 years old. And then I ended up getting my first professional work when I was like 11 or 12. So I've been really fortunate, yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I was really lucky because the people that I got involved with reading their work, the guys like the Will Eisners, and at the time that I started reading this, nobody was paying attention to Will Eisner reprints, and it just happened I came across some of these at a used bookstore. Excuse me. So I started looking at Will Eisner, and you're not really getting much better, even though he was working 60 years ago, 70 years ago at his peak with the Spirit. That's the material I was coming in contact with. I don't know that you've really gotten much better along the way. This guy was dynamite, and he's great compared to the modern people that are working in the field today. So I ended up learning a lot of things from him, and they were being reproduced by a company called Kitchen Sink Enterprises. So I was doing some quick touch-up work on some of the old photocopies of work for those guys that where it was damaged. So yeah, when I was like 11, 12 years old, I was lucky enough to be working on that stuff.
And that beats Jim Shooter's record, right? He started when he was 13.
You're probably
You got
right.
him.
You should probably be the head of Marvel.
You should be, yeah. Okay, Jay, what about yourself? How did you break in?
Well, I remember the defining moment that made me want to become a comic artist was I was sitting in my English class in grade 10, and my English teacher at Harrow High, his name was Mr. Rubinski, and I was doodling like a comic page. And he comes by and he says, "What are you doing?" And he took the page, and I'm thinking, "Oh man, I'm in trouble. I was supposed to be working on like, whatever the Shakespeare homework was or something." And he looks at me and he says, "You should think about becoming a comic book artist." And I said, "What?" And it turned out he loved comics, and he was the first one who ever saw some sort of something in there. And from that day forward, I was kind of always in the back of my mind of where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I actually went to the St. Clair College's Digital Animation program, and I went there for 3 years, and I went there wanting to become a comic artist, but being there, being surrounded by animation, it kind of started to change my mind a little bit. And I think in a way, I learned a lot from that program and how to, art, life drawing and stuff like that. But in a way it hurt me because I tried to simplify everything. Mm-hmm. And after that, one thing I always wanted to do is I always wanted to attend some sort of a Bible college, being a Christian and growing up in that as a Christian. And so I found one up in Owen Sound, which was 1 year devoted to the study of the Bible. I went there for 2 years, and just to try and find out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do in my life. And from that, I met my fiance. We're getting married in 2 months. And I also spent 2 years of working hard on a portfolio. And kind of the same thing as Johnny. A buddy of mine who when I was in college was actually doing the same thing Johnny was doing, backgrounds. I got in contact with him. He got me in contact with Dave. And it was probably about a year ago, last August, I started working, just learning from Dave, doing figure drawing, heads, and he just kept on saying every time, "All right, come back in 2 days, come back in 2 days." So we just kept coming, and he would show me buildings and this and that. And a few months later, I was sending in samples to DC, and I got my first job like in a couple months. And so it was like waiting, a lot of patience, a lot of trying to learn, and then bam, all of a sudden I was working. And so.
And think about that, guys, because if you go back to, let's say, the 70s or something, some young guys showing up at the Jim Steranko's house or Neil Adams' house and saying, "Hey man, you want to show me?" I can't imagine that this stuff would have been happening. And here we have two guys dealing with Dave, who is at the top of the game right now, and he's taking you into his house. And
it's a big deal in that way, because you're bringing a stranger essentially into your house, because we all work out of our house with your studio rather, and
basement.
I got the top floor of it. It's pretty good. So yeah, it's true, because we were strangers to him, and so yeah, we're very lucky.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff, to be hooking up with one of the top guys in the industry, and it ends up leading you within a pretty short time.
Oh yeah.
You guys are young dudes.
I've been a huge fan of Dave's work. Dave actually came and spoke one time at our St. Clair College, during our program, and that was another, I think, key moment when he came in and was talking and just asking him questions about what did you do to get here, and it made it seemed believable the way he was telling it. You just got to have hard work, you got to set a goal, and you got to go for it. And it was just, that was kind of an awakening. At that time, I would have never thought I would end up being taught by my favorite artist, you know, like.
And the first job that you're dealing with is Batman, Superman.
Yeah, like,
Most people are starting out doing the little, quick
whatever.
press things
Yeah,
this
yeah.
big in ash cans, and here you are, first job.
Yeah, it was
It's crazy.
intimidating though. Let's just say
Yeah, but
that.
it was a nice job.
Yeah, you know, and it's, you know, from that I've kind of got my career on track now, and I'm you know, working towards a goal, and yeah, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I know that Dr. Jacobs has to leave soon, so.
Oh, this is the doctor.
Dale.
Dale.
I actually want to know what both after you were doing backgrounds for Dave, what was the first job where you were the lead artist?
Full time. Well,
What was the first book you got?
I only I did the backgrounds when like for Ultimatum, and then the first thing I got on my own was Red Sonja number 50,
Okay.
and that's all me. That's my first body.
Yeah, that was what I wondered. What about you?
Mine was Superman Batman issue 70, and I did half of that.
Okay.
The artist, Ardian Syaf, I think his name, he was moved onto a Green Lantern Corps, and because I don't think Batman Superman was selling very well, they stuck me on it and had me finish it up for them, and yeah, so that was my first one.
And Tony, what was your, you talked about the touch-ups, but what was your first,
The first full.
beyond just touch-ups, first full?
You know what ended up happening was I had shifted away from comic books, and I was fortunate enough to get syndicated through a company in the States in Los Angeles, Creator Syndicate.
So it was strips.
I was doing a strip called Saturday Afternoon, and I still do it. That was almost 10 years ago now that I've been doing this strip. So I was fortunate enough to do that. And that's been keeping me going every night for 10 years. And then I picked up Mick and Me, that was also a daily strip. And then I moved into doing the Incredible Conduit, which is now in comic books, and it's a daily strip as well.
Take it away.
I have another question to ask, actually, that I've asked you before, but, and I know you write your own stuff,
Yes.
so you're doing both.
Well, in fact, I write most of my stuff,
Okay.
but I'm working on a project called The Pharaoh Ones for Legacy Comics that's written by Danny Polanka, and I'm working on
Okay.
a project called Laser Police, which is actually written by Mike Poirier.
Oh, cool. Okay, so then I can ask all three of you this question, because this fascinates me to ask artists. And that's when you're working with someone else, and I know the relationship is different with every artist, but how detailed are the scripts? How much of the page layouts and the storytelling do you have input on as the artist?
Well, kind of every writer is obviously a little bit different.
Yeah.
Same with some pages are more laid out than others as well, the amount of detail they wanted. And the only thing that I really find is a bit of a struggle, I guess you'd say right now, so I'm still pretty new into the scene of it, is sometimes there's a lot asked for in a page or a panel, and you got to try and get as much as you can in there, but at the end of it, it still has to look good, and there's a lot of things that play into just laying on a page, the more that you go on, right? So yeah, trying to just get everything in there and make it look good, it's a lot tougher than I thought it would be.
Right.
So I go with the important things.
Yeah, I love working with writers. Writing so much of the material myself, it's almost a break, and it gives you an entirely different perspective because everybody writes differently. Some of the scripts that I've received, they're like panel breakdowns, and that's great too, to be able to just relax and draw and not have to think about how am I going to position this person? How am I going to do that? Especially when you have 3 other daily strips that you're going to be working on after this and your own comic books as well. It's nice to be able to just look at what somebody else had in their head and say, they've got it together. There it is.
Is Mike's fully
He's the
scripted?
worst. This guy's the worst.
Or is his fully
No,
scripted?
It's fully scripted.
Yeah.
It's very detailed.
Very detailed.
Panel layouts are mostly there. Danny's a little bit looser, but his text is solid. But in terms of visuals, he leaves it a little bit more open for me.
Yeah, I've been working with JT Cruel on the Michael Turner Soulfire series. And JT's doing some stuff now with DC, he's doing Teen Titans and stuff like that, but he knows how to write for an artist, because like Johnny was saying, you'll get some writers who it's like they want every page to have 200 guys fighting, and every panel's the same thing. But JT, he knows, he's like, okay, I'm going to give you one panel where you can go nuts. I really want a detailed shot. Then maybe the next 2 panels are a little bit more easy on the eyes. Maybe it's just a close up or something, and the story flows well. And but at the same time, I mean, with every writer, you still make little changes to the way that the story, like I've added in panels sometimes, because maybe you think, well, the transition from this page to this page is too hard. Maybe it needs something to kind of help it to run smoothly. And
yeah, because when you're really looking at it on the page, it's one thing to write it, and then you kind of see it in your head, and even like with some layouts that I've done, little sketches, and it looks good. But when you actually see it on the proper size, sometimes things need to be changed around, So until you really see it at that size and the layout of it, that's when it's really.
And that's why you're hired as an artist as well. You're valuable. You're taking their stories. You want to have impressive artwork, but you also your key is to tell the story. And sometimes, as the artist, you can see it because you're doing it. You can see that, they've left something out here, and I can see it, but until they see the finished pages, they're not going to know. So,
have you ever done it the other way? Have you ever written for someone else drawing?
A couple of times, but I'm not good at that, because in my head, in fact, I'm not even good at finishing my own pages, because I know what they look like before I even start drawing them. And I just always think, why can't everybody just know what I'm, planning here, so I don't have to spend the time drawing, so I can move on to my next story.
That's really interesting. This is something that I've talked to Jeff Lemire a lot about from this stuff, but I haven't talked to Jeff since he started writing and somebody else is drawing. So I really want to see what that transition is like. It's interesting to me.
But the work that he's done, that you're talking about the Atom?
The Atom and the Superboy stuff.
Sure, but the Atom worked out really nicely. His writing style is so nice. It's almost it's a slight retro, but it's
little 8-page stories, which is interesting too.
He did a nice job. Those are nice pieces of work.
Jeff Lemire is probably, right now, I would love to work with that guy.
Yeah.
Like, when I found out he was from Essex County, I'm like, no way, I'm going to New York Comic Con tomorrow. I'm gonna see if I can meet him and say, hey, I'm from Harrow,
How about all
Essex
these guys?
County.
There are so many good guys that are working in this area. Guys like Darwin Cook started here, and what a influence on so many people. And look at the great work the guy's doing. Jeff, you guys, Dave.
It's amazing.
It really is. And I'm sure I forgot somebody, and I'll feel terrible after. But there are so many good people working from this area professionally.
Anything else on that?
Not right now. I don't
Not right now?
Sure.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of, you were mentioning, telling the story. Is there any, you study, let's just say, you mentioned Will Eisner. You guys ever sat down, have you guys been exposed to Will Eisner at all, the spirit?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Okay.
Not overly familiar, but I know what you're talking about.
Sure, what about something like Understanding Comics? Scott McCloud?
Yeah, I remember I bought that book years ago.
Yeah, okay.
He is one of making comics.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's more useful, actually.
When you guys sit down to design a page, do you have any of that in mind? Any of those, the theory or techniques or?
Not really, no. When the page layouts that I gravitate towards, I guess you could say, or the way that I go about telling the story would be more or less from the artists that I would gravitate towards.
Okay.
Right. So my biggest one on the page is Greg Capullo.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the right way of saying his last name, but Todd McFarlane. I'm really a huge fan of them. So that's where I get a lot of the layouts and the transitions, compositions. That's my biggest, I would say.
What about Tony?
In terms of modern artists, or relatively modern artists, I don't think there's a better storytelling artist than John Romita. He's been my favorite since I was a kid. John Romita? Yeah, senior. Junior's a good storyteller as well, but I don't think there's anybody that's cleaner or had a better sense of implied realism. He didn't get in there and give you every little brick like everybody does today, but you knew that this was wall paneling. You knew that this was inside a house. His lines were so beautiful, and his pacing was outstanding. And you read these stories, and you like, I remember these stories from when I was growing up because they were stories that were told well. They were dealing with characters that you ended up caring about because he drew them so well and recognizably every time. So, from panel to panel, you didn't struggle to say, is that Gwen Stacy or is that Mary Jane? A lot of artists today, they're drawing the same character and you can't tell from panel to panel who they actually are, but they have beautiful shadows, they have beautiful lighting on them. But this guy, people think he's simple in terms of his style. It's extremely difficult, and he was a guy who could really move a page along as well. You're talking about storytelling and how to move a page. When I sit down, and I'll just go quickly and I'll end up giving you some graphic work because you're probably going to have to do this later. When I start looking at a page, I worked in the newspaper industry for such a period of time that I started understanding how the eye moves across the page. So I started taking that into account with comics. Now here's a very simple page and it's colorful, so I'll use this one and you can get it later. But what I'm working with here is I'm starting out here and I'm trying to drag you all over this page, and I want to show you where you're going, and just without you even knowing that you're being directed. So we're starting out with dialogue here. I'm taking you down. His arm's going up to his head. Bang, we're up to his arm, which pulls you down here, yanks you over here with his legs. Through here, we're swinging back up, bang, off the page. So without even realizing it, you've been directed exactly where the artist wants you to go. Now this is a fairly simple version of that because people who have 10 panel pages that do it well, they've really thought that out. But again, that's the storytelling art. It's more than just drawing beautiful pictures. For me, although I appreciate so much good artwork that's out there now, if you can't tell a story, I'm probably not going to remember what you did tomorrow.
The only thing I would say about the storytelling that goes, like they're giving you the script, and you can only do so much with what they've written to you, though, right?
Sure.
Because they're gonna give you panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then if their flow isn't gonna allow you to do like that, it's really a collaboration, obviously. So it does rely on the writer to give you the right direction that you're heading. Because if you're jumping from scene to scene, from this room to that room, this city to that city to a car, it's like you can only do so much. So
Well, here's a perfect argument then for the Marvel way, which the writer gives you a rough outline, and you as the artist are now left to come up with a way of planning this out. And since you're going to know better, and you're going to know better possibly than a writer how to flow that page, by getting just the rough outline, then you start working the pages together. You make these beautiful pages, you move the story, and then you give it back to dialogue.
yeah.
Unfortunately, like what you're saying, that's not the way most people work at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This Marvel doesn't work that way anymore, do they?
I don't think so. In general, it doesn't happen that way because you have, these writers who are celebrities in themselves. In fact, one of the major problems, I think, is you have artists and writers who are bigger than the characters or think they are.
Anything to add to that, Jay?
One of my, I learned from Dave a lot of this stuff, right? So I study a lot of what Dave does, but for myself, I've been looking at a lot of different artists, and some that necessarily maybe artistically don't have anything really to do with the way I draw, but I love the way they tell a story. Bernie Wrightson, Dave gave me the Swamp Thing Bernie Wrightson book, and I just been eating that thing up. His style, the way he draws it, and then in the way that he tells a story is great. And one of my modern favorites is Frank Whitley.
Oh yeah.
I love the way he does interesting panels, and I'm looking for some time when I can actually maybe steal some of his stuff and use kind of the way he would do some cool fight scene panels and things like that. I like that kind of stuff. The one thing I learned from Dave is I always like how Dave Finch, he uses, he'll overlap a panel to kind of guide the eye through it. And I use that a lot because sometimes, I don't know, I find it just it gives you, like you said, like a viewer a good flow of how to flow through the page, you know, in the way that you kind of want to guide them through the page, you know, and you can make certain panels stand out more than others and things like that.
Yeah, what I noticed from you guys, like your work is dynamite. I'm loving all this stuff. You're working from shadows out, and it's interesting to me because I work in the exact opposite way. So you guys are working from the dark out along the lines of like Dave, obviously, and the Bernie Wrights and stuff like that, or artists like that rather than stuff. But it's really interesting to me when I sit down and look at your original pages and Dave's original pages because it's so foreign to me and it's beautiful stuff. And I just love looking at it to see how somebody else can do things so differently than the way that I'm thinking.
Yeah, in this type of style, it's like everything is defined. You know, everything is shadowed.
Yeah.
Like all the rocks on the ground, all the gravel, anything like that. So it's not too much left to the reader's eyes, I guess you could say. But yeah, it's a lot of everything is detailed in that.
And you're working out of the darkness
Yeah.
to the light.
Yeah, I really like the really, really dark look to things. I like when the shadows bleed off into, you know, like the background, and then you have like a window behind, which will show the character, you know, and I think it has a really nice effect.
Do you want to talk about what you're working on right now? Like I see green wanted up here. That's your work, right, Johnny?
Yeah.
And how did that come about?
Well, that's from Dynamite, because I'm under contract with them, so
Okay.
with them for a while. And this is actually, it was from issue 1. And
Which Green Hornet series is it? Because there's so many right
yeah,
now.
there's a couple. This one's Blood Ties,
Blood Ties.
written by Andy Parks. It's a
Okay.
great script. This is a prequel to Kevin Smith's ongoing series, so
Okay.
Is the first issue out yet?
of the Green.
Of your Green Hornet?
No, but I'll be doing a signing at
okay.
Rogues,
Rose Alley, okay.
the 27th October,
October 27th, okay.
4:30 to 6:30.
Okay.
Spread it along the screen.
I believe it's for. Yeah, I think it's. So yeah, that hasn't come out yet, but I forget the question. You can cut this.
Oh, just about, we can just talk about, like, so in that case, you're working with, the writer was Andy Parks, you said.
Yeah.
When you said Andy Parks, I thought Darth Maul, but that's Ray Park Jr. He wrote the Ghostbusters theme, forget it.
Oh, okay.
I've got them all mixed up. Okay, so now when you did that, what was it like working with that writer? Was there anything?
I loved it because I went from Red Sonja, essentially. I did a bunch of covers that are coming out still now. And the first thing I did was Red Sonja. And it was a great story, well written. The only thing is it's not particularly my taste in placement because it's in like, it's in the snow. There's not a lot of elements to really play with, especially because everything in the winter time of the Arctic where it takes place type of thing. It's like all the trees would be dead. You wouldn't have leaves, you know. So it's very minimal. The snow itself, it's just white, you know. So it's not too much to do with that. But when I immediately started reading this stuff, and it's all like, you know, alleys, and it's in you know, seedy, dark rooms and hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff. I just loved it right away. So it gave me a chance to really push my own boundaries and experiment a lot more with a subject matter that I really like.
And is your story tied in all with the upcoming film, or is that completely separate now?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure on that one.
Interesting. Are you gonna see the film?
Oh yeah, that looks good.
It does look good. Now I'm sure have you ever seen the series, the 1960s series?
I actually did, because Bruce Lee was Kato, correct?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And I've seen bits and pieces. I don't know if I've actually watched a whole episode of it. I think it was on around the same time the Batman show
So
was
what?
on,
A
right?
crossover, right? One episode where they.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the character, and it was a lot of fun. It still is, because I'm still working on. It's a 4-part series.
Okay.
So,
Great.
Yeah.
Tony, and you're working on the Conduit right now?
I'm working on the Conduit every day for the newspapers, and the newspaper strips actually are designed. They're not as set up as newspaper strips any longer. In fact, I'm drawing full-size comic page because the comics come out as the Conduit comic books afterwards as well. So I'm working on the second issue of the Conduit. I am working on the Feral ones, which is the first issue that will actually go back to back with white plastic, which I write and draw. And the backup feature for the Conduit is Laser Police, which is a throwback type of legion of superheroes, kind of 1960s sort of feel, which works perfectly with the Conduit, because the Conduit in itself is a bit of a throwback to the 70s style Spider-Man strips that I grew up with. So those are the things I'm working on right now, and pushing websites that, Jolie, who is involved in doing the coloring for our books, she's taken everything over. I don't do anything anymore. I just draw these little pictures, and we have Facebook pages for the Conduit. We have the Incredible Conduit website. We have the Feral Ones website. We have a legacy-comics.com website. So all these things are coming out, and the exposure is doing nice things for all of these things. The nicest thing, of course, is eventually it puts money into the pockets, and that's the game. So.
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Some kind of street party.
Jay, you said you've done some work on Superman, Batman,
Yes.
and what kind of stuff do you have? What are you working on right now?
I actually have a book coming out next week, the 13th. It's I did a short story for a book called The Untold Tales of Blackest Night. So it ties in with the whole Blackest Night thing. And it was actually my editor at DC, Adam Schlagman, who wrote this little short story. So it's a 12-page short. I know that Ethan Van Sciver also has a short in there, and Ivan Rice and Jeff Johns. So my work gets to go back to back with those guys. That's kind of intimidating.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But so I did that, and I enjoyed that story. It was an Animal Man story. So they're trying to kind of revive some of the Animal Man, I think, in the future. And but yeah, it was an interesting time. And myself, I never read Animal Man, so they sent me all these books, and I was kind of looking through them and reading through them and stuff. And
are those worth it just for the covers? Those blank ball and
man,
covers?
those covers. Like
Yeah.
there's a shot in this book that's actually specifically it said I think it was the issue number 2 cover of Animal Man. They said, I want you to do that cover, only it's a Blackest Night version of it. It was an actual page in the book. So and it was kind of cool. I got Alex Sinclair did the colors for that my little story there. So so I did that. That's coming out next week, and now I'm working with Aspen. For myself, working for DC is great, but the amount of they need seasoned artists who can pump out pages really quick, and I'm just starting out, and so my speed isn't up to par with what they need. And so for my career, I felt I should maybe go with another company where I can spend some time and grow. And Dave introduced me to the Aspen guys at Chicago. He's friends with all of them, and they have some of the best color guys, and they're just a great bunch of guys. And they offered me a job to do the new volume of Soulfire, which is going to be announced tomorrow or on Saturday at New York Comic Con. And so, I'm just started. I finished the issue 0 of that a couple weeks ago, and I'm just starting issue 1 of that book, and it's a 9-issue series. And so, for me, it's going to be a great opportunity, I think, to learn, to get my name out there. They only have a few artists, so your name gets slapped onto the internet
And
wherever.
they're big name artists too.
Yeah, and you get invited out to all the cons, you can meet people and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about it. For me, it's kind of different territory because I like the superhero stuff. I want to draw, I would love to draw a Batman series, and I'd love to draw a Green Lantern. And so Soulfire is kind of like a sci-fi fantasy almost kind of thing. So it's taking me out of my comfort zone, but in the end, I think it'll make me a stronger artist. So after that, I don't know what I'll do, but one day I would like to go back and work for DC. So.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Marat.
You just mentioned there Batman and Green Lantern. Those are, I'm guessing, like dream books that you would want to work on. So this question is for all 3 of you, and it's kind of a 2-sided question. First, what is that dream book? Of course, Batman and Green Lantern for you. What is that dream book? And then on the other side of it, have you ever been put in a position to have to draw characters that you're not interested in or that you don't like, and what kind of challenges are associated with that?
I would love to work on Batman, Green Lantern. I would even love to do some of like kind of like the third or fourth rate characters, you know. Like I really enjoyed working on the Animal Man, and I would love to work on a book like the Atom, you know. Like I like characters like that. From Marvel's standpoint, I would love to work on X-Men. X-Men was always my favorite growing up, Batman and X-Men. And another one I would love to do would be like a Superman series, but I think that would be something I'd like to tackle, you know, in 20 years, you know, if I was still in the business and could really, you know, do something with it. As far as characters that are tough, for me, I don't want to. It's kind of different for me. I don't want to I know with Soulfire, there's a lot of characters. When Michael Turner drew him, he drew him very scantily clad, you know. And for me, I always kind of wanted to stray away from using sex to sell, even though that's kind of something that, you know, in comics they do that. They use sex to sell the book. Personally, I kind of want to find a good balance between doing something like that and keeping it still, you know, something that's, I don't know really how to explain it. I think with me, when I'm drawing a female character, I don't try to just make them look seductive and like, you know, take me now kind of pose. I try to make them look, you know, strong and confident. And, you know, a lot of these characters in these comics, like you had to draw Wonder Woman, I mean, she could kick anybody's butt, you know? So you kind of, for me, those are kind of the areas I'd like to stay away from. In the future, I'd actually like to even do some stuff that's more, you know, kid-friendly maybe in a way. I think that there's a lot of kids. I know in my life I have friends who have kids and stuff like that, and I'm thinking I can't really show you guys any of my work, you know? Like, I would love to do something that I could give to a kid and say, read this is cool, you know? So those are kind of some of my dreams along the way.
Yeah, I agree with some of those sentiments. Most of the comics I read growing up and still really enjoy now, you could pass them on to anybody, and they're really worthwhile. You know, I like to keep all the filth into my real life, and then, you know, my comics end up being quite pure as a result. Probably what I would like to work on, I would love to do like a retro style series where I take some of these older characters that I grew up with, like the Iron Mans, the Spider-Mans and stuff like that, and actually draw stories that work between issue 42 and 45 or something. And it's like, okay, well, this happened here, and I'm actually going back to the roots of what made these characters so impressive to me in the first place. I think even with the major characters you have out there, they have 40 years, 50 years of history, and they're really bogged down. If you could just somehow go back and say, I'm not even here, I'm taking it from right here, when the character was still somebody that I really enjoyed. And, you know, Peter Parker was still dating Gwen Stacy, and she was still alive, and the book looked like this kind of thing. I'd love to do something like that, where the stories are single-shot stories. It's not some long-arcing thing, where I really enjoy things like that, like Planetary and things like that, where you have to read from start to finish, and you see 27 issues of the most brilliantly interwoven, scripted comic work that how he was able to, and you can tell from reading 27 that he knew exactly when he started at 1 where he was going. Well, I'm just not smart enough to do that, I guess. I would like to just do simple story that's bang right there. Read it, enjoy it, it's done.
In regards to ever drawing characters that you're not interested in?
Oh, probably the worst characters I ever drew. I did this strip, it was called Mick and Me, and what it was about was my brother and I. So if you have to draw yourself over and over and over again every day, it was a daily strip, man, I hated myself, and I had more reason to hate my brother at the end of it too. Although he was perfect, because he's an idiot child, so he was able to provide me with information constantly. I never was short of this material, but yeah, I hated drawing him. I hate drawing myself.
I just like to say, I kind of mentioned like the whole Soulfire thing. I think what I was trying to say is I with Soulfire, I'm finding that even though you have all these attractive females, it's not written as like smut. It's not. It's still just a fun book. I mean, there's no sexual content in there. It's not getting into anything that's like some books out there. I mean, they take it way too far nowadays. For me, I want to stay away from that. I'd rather stay with, like you said, like the pure kind of thing that anybody can read. And so that's why when I was approached with Soulfire, I read through it and I realized, you know what, I can work with this. I really like the universe. I think it'd be kind of cool and kind of bring some of my, what I can put into it kind of thing and really make something that's different. I think the biggest thing for me is I want to stay away from a lot of the mature, really sexualized content kind of thing. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say, but I didn't come out right.
Well, as for me, starting with if I could do any character, and my dream character would be, no questions asked, would be Spawn. I love the character Spawn, especially the costume. There's so many elements to play around with, the cape, the chains. I think it's one of the best looking costumes out there. It would be my number one for sure. So one day, that's my goal to Spawn. And if you notice, like Green Hornet, his lapels, it's kind of reminiscent of Spawn's, what do you call that?
Collar.
It's got a name for it. I can't remember the name for it. Cape thing, yeah. And it's like, and also I'm a big photographer, like I said, so that's what I kind of incorporated into my Green Hornet. And same with his trench coat. It's not like an average size trench coat. This thing is like 15 feet long sometimes. It's like, but it looks cool, so it works, and it works for the image of the book, because it's a dark image, and it's not necessarily like the Green Hornet, from what I remember. It's kind of jokey and something. Not jokey, but
A little cheesy.
a little cheesy. Yeah, campy, I guess would be the right name, right? So in my Green Hornet, he's kind of like a mean Green Hornet. It's cool because you don't really see a character like it. It's always good when you do the reversal. You take anybody like Spider-Man, Superman. Instead of the normal situation, you kind of put them in something that you wouldn't see him in every day. And I think it worked out for the Green Hornet as well, because he also does have a really cool costume. There's a lot of cool elements to play with. So I think it's cool to see him in a different light, or dark rather. And it's where I'm going with that.
And who would you not want to draw?
There's nobody that really wouldn't, because you're always going to.
Would you draw Archie?
Yeah, I would. Because you know why? You pick out the things out of any character like that, because, in my career, who knows what I'm going to be drawing next, in my future. There's always going to be characters that you're not going to be too hot about. But what I do with any new character that I've done, like I've done the Kato covers, RoboCop, I was a big fan of RoboCop. But these new characters, I pick something out of each one that I really like, and, kind of really exploit that area, and really run with it. So I think if you do that with really any character, there's no characters that I would downright hate to do. I'm sure there'd be stories that I would hate to do because, for whatever reason, but I would just pick out what I like most about them and roll with
I
that.
don't know. I think your Archie would be scary, though.
I'll do an Archie. I don't even know what Archie looks like off the top of my head right now,
Big picture.
Is anyone else from the audience who has anything more to ask?
What writers would you not want to work for at all?
Writers? Wow, you know what? No one really comes to mind that I would want to say in case I end up having an opportunity.
What about Frank Miller, 2010?
Frank Miller 2000. I'll take that.
Or 1980?
Sure.
But no, actually, and speaking of, there's an example. Some of the comics you mentioned, what comes to mind for me is All-Star Batman. You've got a huge selling mainstream comic that's sort of just dealing with smut.
Yeah.
Now, if that assignment came across your desk and you had the opportunity to make probably tons and tons of money,
Yeah.
Would I
Oh,
be?
yeah, I'd be
you
all
take
over
it.
that.
I like the series that you're talking about too, though. But as for as much as we were talking about sexuality of characters, whatever, and you have to gear your drawing to the character. You're not going to have Wonder Woman, bent over, looking over her shoulder at you for a cover, let's say, because it doesn't fit. She's a strong character. But if you have
Whatever.
a different character that it would suit that more or less, I would use that because that's what that character is. That's how she is. You know what I'm saying? If she's seductive, then you kind of use that for her type of thing. Okay, yeah, Harley Quinn, exactly. That's a prime example. She's got that to her. So of course I would use that for her. But if I was doing a Wonder Woman cover series, whatever, that's not a woman that you wouldn't fit.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Tony, I know you have no standards, so pretty much you might.
Yeah, if you're looking for morals or integrity here, you're in the wrong place, man.
Jay? Is it like, not to say, what about writers? I mean, it's a legitimate question, but is there any writer you just absolutely couldn't imagine yourself working with?
I don't know. I think with every project, I would just, like when I started working on this Aspen thing, I asked, I wanted to see kind of what the whole, the arc of the story was going to be, and I read through it and I said, hey, I like it. It's kind of more geared to the way I draw, and it's got some cool fight scenes, and it's kind of more epic and stuff like that. And so I said, yeah, I can do that, but yeah, I don't know. So far I've lucked out with that kind of stuff, and I think as I go down the road and am able to say, yes or no to projects, right now it's kind of just yes to anything because you want to get
I think with maybe I speak for myself, maybe not, but in our situation, maybe it's more geared to the content that we're going to be drawing more than saying yes or no to a specific writer. Because I wouldn't be interested in doing a series of Peter Parker in high school because I don't think I could pull it off very well. It wouldn't be for me. So it wouldn't really matter who wrote it as much as it just, it wouldn't be as interesting. And like I said, I don't think I could pull that off very well.
Yeah, in the end,
it's not my subject matter.
Yeah, maybe Frank Miller comes knocking on your door and gives you a script and you read it and you really like it. Just because maybe he's had a few down books doesn't say that the next one he does isn't going to be good. So, the same thing, I think you read through it, you say yes or no to it, and you say, yeah, maybe I'll do that.
Because, in the end, it's like, your images are going to be there.
You're helping to tell the story.
Yeah.
So you can make it as cool as you possibly can.
Yeah, exactly.
You can.
So you got to use as much as out of the
Okay,
script.
now, what about some of the recent Garth Ennis stuff? I can't imagine I wouldn't be afraid to say I couldn't work for him because I know he'd never come to me to get my style of work to go with his material. I can't imagine doing that sort of thing, like cross.
Yeah, you see, I think the big thing is just matching everybody up correctly. The right writer with the right artist and the right, because then you get a better product in the end.
That's material that I'm just not interested in dealing with.
I have a quick question for all of you, and this came up as you mentioned New York Comic Con. Your thoughts on going to conventions as artists? Just enjoy
This will be my first one, and I'm terrified because I got to do sketches for people. I've never done that before. I'm terrified to do it.
Drawing in front of people is a little bit different.
Yeah.
We're used to drawing in your room all day.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
So for me, that's kind of scary, and it's my first time going to New York. From Harrow, backwoods of Ontario, here going to. My brothers come along with me just to somebody to hang out with. But yeah, Dave, we went to
Chicago.
We went to Chicago with Dave.
Yeah.
Johnny and I, and we had a blast. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
And so I'm terrified to go, but at the same time, I'm really looking forward to it because you meet a lot of cool people there. You get to meet the artists.
Yeah, I like really meeting the other creators, other artists and whatnot, and also all the conventions are really fun because meeting all the people and all the fans and everything like that. But I've never actually been on.
It actually inspires you because you come back from it and you're like, man, these people
Yeah.
are really fired up about this.
Yeah, I always find when I come back, because I've never actually done my own, he's going to be on his own booth and whatnot. I've always been with Dave. He's his Patsy or roadie, right? And with him, San Diego, the year before we went to Chicago, went to Comic-Con, and just seeing, his lines and all that was great. But being on the other side of the table would be great as well, obviously.
Yeah, I think they're a lot of fun. I think they're great. You meet people. They're not there to be all that critical. They're there to have a fun day. It's not like the bloggers that are all over hating your artwork, and just because they're sour that they're not working and making money in the field, they hate everything you do. These people are there to have fun, to enjoy the artwork, and you get great stories out of these things. I remember I was selling a whole batch of prints, and they were going for $20 a piece signed. And this beautiful little girl, probably about 3 years old, came up, and she said, "Oh, I'd like one." And I thought, okay, well, you got $20, kid. But I signed it, I passed it to her, and she broke off half of her Pringle for me and gave it to me. And I thought, isn't that like a sweet story if I want to, pass that one on? And it's like, well, I don't know if Pringles were $20, kid, but I gave it to her anyways, and it worked out. But you meet these great people who are just there to have a lot of fun, and they treat you extremely well. I can't think of anything all that bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've noticed the fans are very appreciative to any creator they meet, and everybody's just in such a good mood, and it puts you in a good mood.
You see all these people running around in these outfits.
Costumes. I love the costumes.
And
I think it's
Dave
great.
told me once he's losing his taste for them a bit because there's only so long that you really do enjoy 45-year-old men with their pot bellies hanging out dressed up as Sailor Moon. And I thought, that probably says it all, but I'm not tired of it yet. So.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, you guys mentioned that, you have, possibly some issues driving for other people, and you mentioned that it's terrifying. That,
I haven't done it. I haven't done it really, so.
But I know personally that Tony and I both have a 24-hour comic. How do you guys feel about that? Do you guys?
What is 24 pound?
You have to put
24
together.
pages, 24 hours.
Oh wow.
It's brutal.
Sounds like hell.
It's brutal. And it was fun. It was hilarious.
Yeah?
None of us finished. None of us
How
finished.
close did you get?
I think I got 18 pages done, and they progressively got worse. You start out with a lot of fire and vinegar at the beginning, and it's like, okay, I have 24 hours. Every hour, I'm slapping one of these things out, and as 3 o'clock approaches, because you're starting at 6 and you're going until 6 the next day.
You start at 6 in the morning?
No, 6 at night, and you go
okay.
all through the night, and at 6 o'clock you're done.
Oh, okay.
The next day. So 24 hours, and you're supposed to stay awake the whole time. And the
Red
people,
Bull.
yeah, and whatever they bring, right? So it was a lot of fun, but nobody got anything worthwhile done. I think I got 6 or 7 pages that were really worthwhile, and then they just decrease in there.
I'm lucky if I do like a page in a day and a half, so I could just imagine it would come out in 24 hours and it's great.
You
So,
try to stick people after a while.
yeah.
Well,
Start drawing like James Kuchel.
Oh yeah, and some of the people they ended up getting published, and you're so disappointed because you see that they ended up getting their 24 pages done.
Oh, it gets
And
published in the end?
yeah, if you
That's
actually
wow.
get.
Does it have to be like in a certain quality then too?
Well, this is what I
Yeah, 'cause that's-
there was a story of a hare that traveled over 24 pages. This person drew a hare,
like a hair?
panel after panel, a hare. a
Right,
hare.
oh, okay, a hare.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of cheating.
But he got it done, and he
Just a
ended up
line.
published. And I killed myself and got 18 decent pages. I was, looking to show up at a convention and choke the guys.
Yeah.
Do you guys? This is sort of a big question, but do you guys feel like do you guys feel the comic industry right now is growing or shrinking, or maybe both?
Well, I mean, obviously the movies are really helping out, but as for actual comic book sales, I don't know how much people go and see Iron Man and then go and buy all the Iron Man books. But it's definitely because all the graphic novels that are coming out now too, right? Like, Watchmen, and that came out, that introduced a lot of people to the story, and it seems like there's a lot more coming out. Like what was the one that just came out not too long ago? Scott Pilgrim, right? I didn't even know that was comic, right? I don't know every single one. Some people expect me to know every single one. Maybe it's a bigger one, I realize that, but I would think that though it's in a really good state right now. I think it's really healthy. I know that in the end of the 90s, the early 2000s wasn't the greatest standing. It's everything that I've read, it was going through a lot of bad times. Maybe it was the late 90s or so. But I think it's doing pretty well now. And also with the whole digital age too, it's all going to be online pretty soon. If not now, right? Because you can get subscriptions to Marvel and DC. Yeah. So, but I don't think that it'll ever really, I'm sure it'll take a chunk out of the actual book sales. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're going to want the book. Because I've even read or seen comics online, and I'd go and buy the book the next day. It'll never substitute for it because you don't have to have the power turned on. You don't need to have log on to the internet. Any of that. It's so simple. You know, it's the pages. It's like novels. You
It's
know.
always nice to hold it.
Yeah, exactly. You really get to study it up close, and it's not you're not looking at a screen with pixels. I guess it's digital.
Personally, I think like with Marvel acquiring or being acquired by Disney, I'm hoping that Marvel will start to put out some more stuff to try and reach out to the younger younger generations. Because, like you said, you go to a convention, it's all people who are 35 and older. You know, like you gotta get into the younger generations in order to kind of bring them into.
And honestly, Marvel and DC are the worst two companies for dealing with kids.
Yeah.
Some of the best kid stuff is being produced by Scholastic Books.
Mm.
They recolored and put out all the Bone books.
Yeah.
They're doing a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Toon Books, the Art Spiegelman and Francois Moulet, they do these great books that are aimed at 6, 7, 8-year-old kids. So there's a lot of good stuff, but it's not Marvel and DC that's doing
Yeah.
it. It's other presses that are putting. Oni's done some really good stuff for kids, but it's not Marvel and DC. I mean, they have their little tiny bits.
Yeah.
Like Teen Titans.
They have Tiny Titans, and they did a really nice relaunch of Billy Bats and Shazam and a few things, but yeah.
But even some of the stuff, like I'll pick up a book that says it's A for all ages, and I read through it, and there's swearing in it. I'm thinking, I wouldn't give that to my 3 or 4-year-old to look at.
What kind of
you know?
swear words are really?
Well, they're like bleeped out, but it's still
can't
it's
say
it's
it.
there. You know, it's still like.
Oh, it's like the cash.
Yeah, you know, like, but I'm thinking, like, I mean, you don't have to have every book aimed at a kid, but like you said, like if I wanted to buy a kid a Batman book, I don't know, like I wouldn't,
I
some
get
of
him
the
Dave's
stuff.
because it comes out next month, and that's going to be an amazing book.
Yeah, but yeah, he's still a Dave. But
Two
Dave
ways
writes
with that.
to more of a mature audience, right? He's not
I
gonna
can work
write
too,
to,
though.
like I think like every book has its own audience, right? But like you said, it's almost like DC and Marvel are hoping those other companies are going to pull all those kids into comics, but I don't know if they will.
Yeah. But what age do people really get into comics? Like even I know if you go really far back, it'd be a higher rate. But at what age do people actually really start buying books? Because how many 10-year-olds are really buying comics?
Well, see, that isn't that the
Obviously, it rolls
that's
into the
snag right there.
15-year-olds.
When I was 10 years old, I was buying comics because they were 25 cents.
Was that like the common thing?
Yeah,
It's
and
like
There wasn't as much competing, right?
Yeah.
There weren't really video games.
that's what I mean.
It
Yeah.
wasn't all the.
and let's say you're 10, 12 years old, whatever, and your dad gives you $5 allowance. Well, you could go out and buy 3 or 4 books, and they were because they were so cheap. Every one of my friends was running to Max Milk and things like
Yeah,
that.
they don't really have that corner stores too much anymore. right?
So you would run there, bang, you got these books, and everybody at school the next day was talking about them, just like we talk about television now. Now you have a good book selling 60,000, 80,000 copies. Well, back then,
Yeah, it was
when the book was
100,000.
25 cents, you were selling 200, 600,000 for the Spider-Man.
Yeah, but when was the last time books were 25 cents?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
1976.
Yeah.
I know that,
And
1976.
that's the problem, because the business is now set up that they're not really in the corner stores. So you have to pay for the cost of the book, pay
Yeah.
us to do them. And then the distributor, Diamond Distributor, is pulling 33% of the book, and then the
Yeah, but
store is
with the
selling
whole
30.
inflation too, though, I'm sure it's
Well,
kind
inflation-
of got to be worked out.
Oh,
in
not
there.
even- I
Because
can't
minimum
imagine
wage is like
what.
what, $11-something now? What was it in '76? $4,
It's still
$3?
$3 or $4 for a comic, relative to what a kid has to spend.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the average comic is like at least $3, right? $3.50,
$4,
$4.50
yeah.
around there.
That's why the Fell stuff, how much was it? $2?
Yeah, and $1.99.
$1.99 was such, that's what they were trying to do, was produce a comic that, it's just gonna pay for it with my spare change.
Yeah, I don't know where the actual prices would have come from, like of the.
Well, you basically have to charge at least $3 for a
Yeah.
book, because the store doesn't want to sell it if they're only making 10 cents on the copy. Diamond's not going to do the distributing for it because they're only making 15 or 20 cents.
Yeah, but
So-
when the book was selling for 25 cents, what were they making then? 2 cents?
Pretty much, but they
From
were
the
also
store.
selling a lot more ads, and Marvel was acting as their own distributor, and you were actually getting involved in the places like the Max Milks, the 7-Elevens picking up costs for distribution. It doesn't happen that way anymore.
And they're afraid of it too.
Yeah.
And all that.
I think a lot of the comics kids are buying are longer form, so they're manga size or they're book size, and they're getting them. I don't think there's not. If you look at Border City and Groves, they don't have a lot of kids. They don't have a lot of people under high school age.
Yeah, that's
buy. So kids seem to be getting it through things like Scholastic, so they actually buy through the schools.
Yeah,
or they
I
buy,
remember the
or they
book
buy
fair
at
stuff that they
bookstores.
do.
Their parents buy them for them at bookstores, which the bookstore penetration is great for comics.
Oh, yeah.
Longer form than floppies, obviously.
Yeah, but like you mentioned manga, did you?
Mangas.
Because that's huge though. Japan, right?
Yeah, here too.
Well,
It's
some
big here.
over there though. It's like it's
Everybody.
ridiculous,
Everybody.
right? But what's the
This thing.
yeah? We're talking like the demographic. It must be through all the ages,
It's
though,
every
right?
age. Yeah, you can buy a manga about anything. I have one at home that's food preparation manga. It has a story through it. But
Something
that's
high
the
end
theme.
food, yeah.
'Cause- And it was wildly popular.
Yeah.
You know, instructional manga, there's, you know, as far as fiction, story-based fiction, I mean, there's four demographics that's targeted towards.
And nobody's keeping these things. When I was there, I knew that Tuesday was garbage day. I ended up being there for a month and a half, and I would go through the back areas of the stores, and there were stacks of these comic books available.
They're treated like newspapers.
Yeah,
right?
tossed
Magazines,
right
I mean,
out.
they're tossed.
Now, one thing that's important, everybody goes to work in Japan on mass transit. They have, 45 minutes, each way to read these things. They get left on things. This is bringing up my question. One thing that's coming up in Japan right now is they're very big on cell phones, but their cell phone culture is completely insulated. The Thai culture, the iPhone is beginning to make a little bit of a breakthrough into it. The iStore, of course, is very powerful. Amazon's very powerful. Katai comics, which are sold by, very cheap subscription. One, not a page, but like a panel. Next, and you subscribe. And it's like a minor amount. Very big over there. I do not know if it would ever jump to North America with, say an iPhone or an Android phone, from the Android store. But what if? How would you feel about having to draw for a, screen about this big, 2 by 3?
Well, yeah, you couldn't really appreciate the amount of work that would go into it, obviously. Sure, you could read it then and get the story out of it, but yeah, that wouldn't. Even like the iPhone, which has a big screen, it's still not even comparison to the smallest panel that would be on an average comic page, right? So I wouldn't like that too much.
Okay, well, our hour is up, so we're gonna wrap it up. But maybe I can ask you guys one quick thing before we go, okay? In 140 characters or less, can you just tell us maybe the reaction that you got from your friends when you told them, "I'm a professional comic book artist now"?
I remember emailing my teacher and telling him, and his wife actually was the art teacher at my school as well, and just telling him what I had done and how I had finally made a break, and they were very proud. And my parents are very proud, and yeah. And one of the greatest things was Dave told me he was very proud of me, and now for me that meant a lot for him to say I'm proud of you and how you've gotten this far, and I just want to make him proud of the work I can do in the future.
Nobody really seemed to care that much. They expected, that I would amount to nothing outside of comics. So it was no surprise when I started working in comics.
Great.
No one was upset, and now everybody seems to be pretty happy. I'm happy because I'm not missing any meals, and they can borrow money from me when they're missing theirs. So it works out all right.
Yeah, I've been drawing literally my whole life, all through grade school. I said I wanted to do comics only. So everybody that kind of knows me already knows that I always draw. That's the only thing I ever wanted to do. So I don't think it's really too big of a surprise. I guess the only real surprise would be the follow through. A lot of kids would talk about, I want to be a hockey player, and like to actually make it to being NHL, it's a lot of work. So I just think the follow through was people.
Well, that's a plus too. Probably advice for people who want to get into comics. I boxed for about 7 or 8 years. So if your dad's looking at you and saying, my kid can be a boxer or he can be a comic artist, all of a sudden drawing comics is pretty good for as a dad, It's like, how are you going to draw with all those broken fingers? And he's right, eh? It's like, now I have like these fingers that, I look very proper at teeth, as a result of,
like that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot for coming out. We really appreciate it. I don't know if you guys. Is there any interaction that's going to take place after this, or?
I'm here. If someone wants to look at stuff,
Sure.
feel free.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming out.